Walk past an old brick building and look closely at the walls. Every so often, you'll see a heavy iron star bolted directly into the masonry. Most people assume it's decoration. It isn't. In many old buildings, that star is the visible end of a much larger structural system, an iron anchor connected to a metal tie rod running back through the building, helping keep aging masonry walls from spreading, bowing, or pulling away from the structure. And that means the strange star you can see from the street may only be the smallest visible piece of what's hidden behind the wall. Because once you understand what these anchors were actually doing, old brick buildings start to look very different. The real question becomes, why did so many of them need to be held together in the first place? Start with the star itself. That piece of iron bolted to the brick isn't just attached to the wall the way a house number or a nameplate is attached. It's fastened through the wall, and what it connects to on the other side is the actual reason it's there. Builders and engineers call it an anchor plate, sometimes a wall plate, sometimes a patras plate, depending on where and when it was made. Under all of those names, the job is the same. It sits against the masonry and spreads out force. Picture pulling on a small washer pressed into soft wood. Concentrate that pull on a tiny point, and the washer can dig in, crack the surface, or tear straight through. Spread the same pull across a much larger plate, and the wood barely notices. That's the entire logic of the iron star. A rod pulling from inside the building needs somewhere to end on the outside, and it can't simply end in a hole in the brick. Brick and stone don't hold a concentrated pulling force well. So the builder gave the rod a wide iron foot to stand on and shaped that foot so it could also sit proudly on a public facade. That's the part you can see. The plate, the bolt head at its center, the way it's clearly older than the paint around it. What you can't see is what the bolt is actually holding on to. And that's where the real story starts, because the star was never the point. The star is where a much longer piece of iron happens to surface. Follow that iron inward, and the picture changes. Behind most anchor plates is a rod, sometimes a flat bar, running into the body of the building. In many structures, it crosses the full width of the interior, emerging on the far wall as another plate, sometimes plain, sometimes matching. In others, it stops short, anchored instead to a floor beam, a roof timber, or an interior wall that doesn't need its own exterior plate at all. The arrangement isn't identical from building to building. What stays consistent is the principle, a metal tie, working in tension, connecting one part of the structure to another, with the visible star simply marking the spot where that tension terminates against the outside face of the wall. This is the payoff the title promised. What looks like an ornament from the street can be the exposed end of a structural connection extending deep into the building. Somewhere behind that brick, iron is doing quiet, continuous work that has nothing to do with how the wall looks and everything to do with whether it stays where it's supposed to be. Here's the part worth being careful about. Seeing a star on a building doesn't mean that building was about to fall down. Some of these ties were built in from the start, part of the original structural plan, installed the same year as the brick around them. Others were added decades later, brought in by a contractor who looked at a wall doing something it shouldn't and decided it needed help staying in line. The plate on the outside looks the same either way. The reason behind it doesn't announce itself. It has to be worked out. What the tie is resisting is the next question, and it leads straight into the wall itself. Masonry is remarkably good at one thing, standing on top of itself. Stack enough brick or stone with mortar between the courses, and you get a wall that can carry enormous weight straight down for centuries without complaint. Compression is what brick was built for. What brick is not built for is being pulled apart, pushed sideways, or asked to bend. A wall doesn't need to be weak to run into that problem. It just needs to be disconnected from whatever used to be holding it in line. Think about the parts of a building that aren't the walls. Floors span between them. Roof structures rest on top of them. Beams tie one wall to the opposite wall through the middle of the building. When all of those connections are solid, the walls aren't really working alone. The floors and roof act like internal bracing, quietly stopping the walls from leaning out, even when nobody notices they're doing it. Loosen that bracing, and the wall is on its own. A roof framed with a shallow pitch can push outward at the top of the wall with real, sustained force, a load called thrust, nudging brick outward year after year. A floor that wasn't well tied into the masonry to begin with offers the wall no help at all. Settlement in the ground beneath a building can shift one section relative to another. Old mortar can deteriorate. A wall can simply drift, a fraction of an inch at a time, for so long that nobody who built it is alive to see where it ends up. None of this needs to be dramatic to matter. A wall doesn't have to crack visibly or lean at an alarming angle for a builder or engineer to decide it needs restraint. Sometimes the decision is preventive, sometimes it responds to movement that's already begun. The tie rod's job, in either case, is to put the wall back in a relationship with the rest of the building instead of letting it act alone. It pulls, quietly and constantly, keeping the wall from drifting further than it already has. That star gives an invisible force somewhere to end, which raises the obvious question. If the plate's job is purely structural, why does it so often look like a piece of art? Anchor plates were never limited to the star. Walk through an old industrial district or a historic residential block, and you'll find round plates shaped like crosses, plain rectangular bars, and rosette patterns that look almost floral. All of them do the same structural job. All of them press against the wall and spread the same pulling force across a wide area of brick. The star happened to become one of the most common and recognizable shapes, especially across parts of the eastern United States and in older cities throughout Europe with heavy brick and stone construction. But there's no need to search for a hidden mechanical reason behind the 5 points. No credible engineering source suggests that a star spreads or distributes force in some uniquely superior way compared to a circle or a bar of similar surface area. What matters structurally is the total bearing area of the plate and how securely it's fastened, not the outline traced around its edge. What the star shape gave builders was something else, a plate that would sit permanently on the public face of a building and could be made to look intentional rather than industrial. A blacksmith or foundry casting these plates had every reason to make them handsome, since everyone walking past would see them for as long as the building stood. The decoration was real, it just wasn't the reason the iron was there. So the star could be functional and ornamental at once, with neither quality cancelling out the other. That combination is exactly why so many people have walked past these plates for years without questioning them. They register as decorative first, because decorative is what they were designed to look like. The structural job hides in plain sight behind the appearance. Now here's a harder question. If two nearly identical old buildings on the same street both have iron stars, can you assume both were built with them from day one? No. And this is where the investigation gets genuinely interesting. An anchor plate on a facade can represent the original structural design, planned by the builder from the first drawings. It can just as easily represent something added 10, 50, or 100 years after the building went up, brought in when someone noticed a wall wasn't behaving the way it should. The plate alone doesn't tell you which. There are visual clues that can point an observer in one direction or another. Anchors that repeat at regular intervals along a facade, lined up floor by floor, often suggest a coordinated original system, since that kind of consistency usually comes from a single planned installation rather than a series of separate repairs. Anchors that appear only in one section of a wall, or that don't quite match their neighbors in style or metal color, can suggest something added later, targeting a specific problem rather than following an overall plan. Mortar that looks patched or repointed immediately around a plate can hint at more recent work. Cracking nearby, even hairline cracking, can hint at movement that prompted the installation in the first place. None of these clues prove anything by themselves. A plate that looks slightly different from its neighbors might just reflect a different foundry, or a repair using period-appropriate materials rather than modern replacements. Sometimes the brick tells you more than the star. A close look at coursing, patching, and mortar color around and beneath the plate often carries more information than the shape of the iron itself. Real certainty about when a tie was installed and why generally requires more than a glance from the sidewalk. It calls for building drawings, maintenance records, or a physical survey by someone trained to read masonry the way a doctor reads an X-ray. What's clear either way is this: sometimes the iron was part of the skeleton from the very beginning, planned alongside the brick. Sometimes someone came back afterward, looked at a wall that had started to move, and decided the skeleton needed reinforcing. Both stories end with the same star on the same kind of wall, only the history behind them differs. Step back from any single building, and the same logic shows up everywhere brick and stone were used at scale. Old row houses often carry anchor plates at floor levels, tying exterior walls into the floor framing that runs between them. 19th century warehouses and mill buildings, built with thick brick walls and heavy timber or iron interiors, frequently show anchors at multiple levels, since a tall, open industrial structure has fewer internal walls to brace it naturally. Churches and other monumental masonry buildings, with tall, unbroken walls and roof structures that can generate real outward thrust, are common places to find substantial tie systems, sometimes running the entire width of the nave. Even masonry arch bridges use versions of the same idea, restraining the spandrel walls that sit above the arch itself. The specific building type changes, the underlying engineering doesn't. The star is not the technology, tension is. A masonry building that looks solid and monolithic from across the street is, in reality, a system of relationships. Walls carry weight down through compression. Floors and roofs span between the walls. Beams and ties connect opposing walls to each other. Every one of those connections either helps hold the building together as a single unit or leaves individual pieces freer to move on their own. The building looks like brick and stone, but part of what makes it behave like one connected structure rather than a set of separate walls that happen to be next to each other may be iron you can barely see. None of this belongs only to the past. Structural engineers and historic preservation specialists still use ties, anchor plates, and related restraint systems today, on buildings hundreds of years old and on new construction where the same forces apply. Modern hardware doesn't usually take the shape of a Victorian star. It's more likely to be a stainless steel plate, a threaded rod, or a resin-anchored fixing hidden almost entirely inside the wall. But the physical problem it solves hasn't changed. Masonry still resists compression far better than tension. Walls still need connection to the rest of a structure to behave the way their builders intended. It's worth being direct about what this means for how we think about the people who built these systems in the first place. An anchor star on an old wall isn't necessarily evidence that the original builders got something wrong. It can just as easily be evidence that someone understood a force acting on that wall clearly enough to design a specific, lasting response to it, using nothing but iron and geometry. What's disappeared isn't the engineering. Engineers still study and apply the same principles daily. What's disappeared, for almost everyone else, is the ability to look at that plate on the wall and recognize what it's doing. So go back to that wall. The iron star bolted into the brick, the building around it that looks, at a glance, like a single solid mass of masonry. Before, that star probably read as ornament, an old-fashioned detail added for character, the kind of thing you'd notice for a second and then walk past. Now it reads differently. It's the visible endpoint of a structural relationship you can't fully see, a rod or bar running back into the building, tied to a floor, a roof, or an opposite wall, holding a piece of that structure in position the way it has for 100 years or more. The star is not what's interesting. What's interesting is everything attached to the other side of it. If you want more investigations into physical details hiding in old architecture, things we still walk past without knowing what they do, subscribe.